We shall now discuss how the jhana factors exist in the mind and how their functions are interrelated in the first absorption. In the first jhana, all 5 factors are present and coordinated to make a single whole. Now it may be asked how 5 factors can be present simultaneously, while the mind is concentrated on just one object, one-pointed, without thinking. Anyone who does not know the answer to this question cannot understand what is meant by concentration at the stage of the first absorption. First of all, it must be understood that these so-called factors are merely constituents or components, which combine to make up the whole. Just as a rope composed of 5 strands is regarded as one rope, or a sweet having 5 different ingredients as one sweet. This is what the word factor or constituent means. By in the first jhana, the 5 associated factors are present in the mind simultaneously. Each is firm in itself, and at the same time each supports and is supported by the others. They are like 5 poles, which are already fixed firmly in the ground and become all the firmer when joined together at the top. With the counterpart sign, paigamitta, firmly established, the mind has full concentration, apana, firm collectedness. Which means that the 5 factors are joined together as a single whole. This state is called jhana, firm concentration. With the appearance of the counterpart sign, vitakka is no longer present in the form of concentration of the in and out breaths, having been transformed into concentration on air at one point. It is not that vitakka fades away in the early stages of counting and connecting in contact, but that it becomes progressively more subtle and calm, and remains so right up to the stage of fixing or the counterpart sign. In the same way vikara is present from the very start of the practice, becoming finer and finer right up to the stage of fixing, at which point it helps the mind to perceive the counterpart sign
and to comprehend it thoroughly. Vikara and vitakka collaborate right from the beginning, and so vikara is fully present at the stage of the counterpart sign. Then rapture, piti, arises, at first only slightly, as a natural successor to vitakka and vikara. In fact, rapture is present right from the beginning steps, even during the practice of connecting and contact, though then only intermittently. Only in fits and starts, when vitakka and vikara become firmer and subtler, rapture is also present, even at the stage of fixing or the arising of the counterpart sign. Happiness, sukha, is present also, as it always is when there is rapture. The state in which the mind is firmly fixed on the counterpart sign without wavering is called one-pointedness, ekaggata. Thus, with the arising of the counterpart sign, all 5 jhana factors are fully established. When the mind, by way of the counterpart sign, has attained full concentration in the first absorption, the 5 factors are established simultaneously and interdependently as constituents of jhana. At this stage, there is no need to pay attention to the image or counterpart sign because the jhana factors establish themselves in its place. Thus there remains only a natural automatic supervising by the power of the 5 factors harmoniously combined. It is as if a driver were sitting in his cart, holding the reins unworried while a docile horse pulls the cart along a smooth road. It must not be thought that the 5 factors have to be established intentionally, one by one. The harmony and unintentional unification of the 5 factors comes about simply as a result of proper practice, just as, in the case of the cart, everything goes smoothly even though the driver, holding the reins indifferently, is not actively concerned. It should also be realized that each of the 5 jhana factors is like one single object which can appear different when seen from different angles.
The characteristics of each factor change with the passing of time and progress through the stages of the practice. To clarify this, we return to the analogy of training the calf. Consider the situation in which the calf has already been subdued, become perfectly obedient to its owner, and is lying peacefully by the post. Let us review the process of training and see which characteristics remain of those present in the beginning. At first the calf, on being tied up, jumps to and fro and prances around the post. The conditions of being tied and prancing about correspond to vitakka and vikara. But now the behavior of the calf has changed these characteristics corresponding to vitakka and vikara. The calf is lying peacefully close to the post. The characteristic of being tied corresponds to vitakka, and that of lying close to the post to vikara. Essentially both characteristics remain, though they have been changed in form. The calf has become gentle. At first the calf was obstinate, disliked the owner, and delighted in disobeying him. Now it is content to be familiar with the owner and delights in obeying him. This corresponds to rapture. Happiness corresponds to the condition in which the calf sleeps undisturbed because the owner does not strike it and the rope does not chafe it as a result of its own struggling. And the last factor, one-pointedness, corresponds to the calves not leaving the post, but staying by it permanently. The 5 characteristics of the calf's behavior together constitute the training of it. And they correspond to the 5 factors of the first jhana, which together constitute success in developing this level of concentration. The 5 jhana factors are not to be developed intentionally and separately. They are results of one single practice, the jhana, which has 5 different characteristics as it is viewed from different angles. And it is for this very reason that the jhana factors can exist spontaneously in the one mind.
And at the one time, understanding this clears up once and for all the question how 5 mental states can exist in the one jhana. Now we discuss how each jhana factor is effective in destroying one of the 5 hindrances. To understand this, one must know which jhana factor is opposed to which hindrance. This can be seen by examining their effects. Vitakka implies fixing the mind on any single object. As long as vitakka is present, the hindrances that are opposite in character, such as restlessness and worry, cannot arise. Sensual desire cannot arise either, because the mind is fixed on the concentration object. The same holds good of vikara. As long as vikara is present, there is activity without hesitation or interruption, and thus skeptical doubt is directly diminished. Rapture and happiness are the natural enemies of ill will and torpor. They also diminish sensual desire because, although they do bear some resemblance to desire, their object is the very opposite of sensuality. While sensual desire is very much concerned with and dependent on sense objects, rapture and happiness are dependent on renunciation of them. As for one-pointedness, it diminishes all 5 hindrances, thus each jhana factor is opposed to a particular hindrance, and is also to some extent an enemy to all the other hindrances. Like darkness and light, these 2 opposed groups cannot exist together. The hindrances begin to diminish from the time of neighborhood concentration, upakara samadhi, that is, before jhana appears. Once jhana or full concentration, anapanasati, has been attained, all 5 jhana factors are fully developed. It is not the case that any particular jhana factor subdues only that hindrance which is its paired opposite. Nor is it the case that all the jhana factors have to be gathered in anapanasati before the hindrances can be driven out. This process of eradication has been going on since upakara samadhi.
As a matter of fact, the hindrances begin to disappear at the stage of fixing the mind on the preparatory sign. And from the stage of the acquired sign onward they are completely absent. As long as any hindrance remains, the acquired sign will not appear. Thus, when the stage of the counterpart sign is reached, the hindrances have already completely disappeared. Even though the jhana factors have not yet arisen in full strength, and concentration is only at the level of neighborhood concentration. When all 5 jhana factors appear clearly and firmly in the form of full concentration of jhana, then the hindrances are eliminated. And they remain absent for the entire duration of the jhana, even when only a trace of it remains. Namely the happiness that arises out of concentration. In order to understand this fully, we must consider the different kinds of samadhi. Chapter 8, Progress Towards Absorption. Genuine samadhi, or concentration, is of 2 kinds, upakara samadhi and anapanasati. Upakara samadhi is, literally, neighborhood concentration, a level of concentration approaching very near jhana, almost attaining it, in fact. Anapanasati is full concentration, concentration that is firm, concentration at the level of absorption. The concentration of the beginning stages such as counting and connecting is not yet true samadhi. It may be called preparatory concentration, parakama samadhi, that produces none of the effects implied in our definition of the word samadhi. Hence it is not included here as samadhi, and we reckon only 2 kinds of samadhi. Comparing neighborhood concentration and full concentration will help us understand them both better. Let us speak first about their effects. Neighborhood concentration is the state of being in the immediate vicinity, upakara bhumi, of jhana. approaching very close to jhana but still falling short of it, while full concentration is the state of having arrived. The actual attainment of jhana.
On the analogy of going to a village, the first of these two states corresponds to reaching the boundary of the village. The second to reaching its center. Both amount to reaching the village. In terms of the progress of the practice, neighborhood concentration is attained as soon as the hindrances disappear. Freedom from hindrances is the only condition. Full concentration, on the other hand, is attained only with the full arising of the jhana factors, in particular one-pointedness. Note that the falling away of the hindrances and the appearance of the jhana factors do not necessarily take place simultaneously. Another difference between these two forms of concentration is that neighborhood concentration is unsteady. It collapses and rises again like a child learning to walk, because the jhana factors are sometimes present and sometimes not, arising and ceasing. Arising and ceasing repeatedly. By contrast, in full concentration all the jhana factors are present constantly, steadily, so that this form of concentration is stable, resembling the walking and standing of a grown-up person rather than the stumbling of the child learning to walk. To explain more specifically, when anapanasati has reached the stage of neighborhood concentration, the mind has the counterpart sign as concentration object. The 5 jhana factors are not yet fully established, arising and disappearing by turns. Hence concentration cannot be shifted from the counterpart sign to the jhana factors. This is why the mind cannot as yet be raised to the level of the jhana factors. It is not yet firm enough to attain full concentration, which comes only when attention is transferred from the counterpart sign to the 5 jhana factors, making them clearly manifest as the object to be firmly concentrated on. When full concentration terminates in jhana in this way, the meditator is conscious of all 5 factors at one time without any kind of thinking.
At this stage in the practice, the important thing is to preserve the sign carefully until the mind has successfully gathered together the jhana factors. If the sign fades away, the mind will not be sufficiently composed to develop and gather in the 5 factors. In other words, the mind can gather all the 5 jhana factors only if the sign is present, clear and firm. To put it yet another way, the meditator can concentrate the mind fully by gathering all the 5 jhana factors while the mind is firmly fixed in neighborhood concentration. Thus the counterpart sign is very important, and must be maintained and supported the entire time the mind is in neighborhood concentration. No matter how many days, months, or years that may be, if the meditator wishes to attain jhana, he must preserve the sign with unflagging effort until he achieves full absorption. The meditator is advised to protect the sign and keep it safe and sound at all times. Just as a queen protects the embryo of the emperor-to-be that she carries, the sign is the developing embryo, giving birth to the child, the attainment of jhana. If the queen is not careful, the child may die in the womb so that she will have to wait for a new conception. The case where both mother and child die would correspond to giving up the practice of concentration altogether, in which case all is lost. The meditator must guard the sign well as a foundation for gathering in the jhana factors until they are firmly established and appear clearly, giving rise to full concentration of absorption. Part of the practice of concentration is taken more seriously than this. The gathering in of the jhana factors by way of the counterpart sign is the most delicate process in the whole practice of meditation. Both tranquility and insight, this technique is like delicate handicraft. It must be done neither too energetically nor too sluggishly, neither too tensely nor too loosely, neither too rapidly nor too slowly.